good afternoon, everyone, and it is wonderful to be back. It feels a little bit like a homecoming. The first meeting here a year ago was the first meeting after COVID, and everybody came out to meet us. There's some familiar faces here. I think some of them were masked a year ago. Now we're not wearing masks, so it's good to see you all. I'm going to start off today with a couple of questions. Who had a workout already today? Raise your hand. Okay. Who has avoided a workout to come to the lunch and learn instead? Okay, one hand. Okay. Now I want to see how often you work out. Could you raise your hands? And we're watching you virtually, wherever you are. We're watching. How many of you work out once a week? Twice? 3 times? Wonderful. All right. Good.
More than 3.
More than 3. We have some real athletes here. Okay.
That's the one.
That's the one. Okay. Now the next question. How often do you work on your mental fitness? How often do you focus on that? If you're like me, physical fitness is very important. I work out every day, every morning, and do as much as I can do throughout the week. Used to run long runs and all that kind of stuff. But the wonderment around mental fitness and how to do it, it's, I guess, no easy answer until today. We're going to talk about that, mental fitness. COVID had an impact on our physical fitness for sure, but also our mental fitness. And there are wonderful ways to rejuvenate our interest in that. And we're going to talk about some fairly simple ways to get involved, understand mental fitness, and become very active in it. I've been fascinated in brain and neuroscience for many years. For about 4 years, I've been studying mind kinetics and integrating that into my coaching programs, which integrates our left brain, right brain, subconscious, conscious, superconscious thinking. For the last year, I've been studying this program in mental fitness, and I am delighted to have the opportunity to unpack this to you today, to talk about it, okay? And actually, and so we're going to talk about mental fitness as a way to grow core mental muscles so that you'll thrive in challenging times. That's what mental fitness is about. Now, I'm not going to go very sciencey today, but this is it. These are neurons. A fellow I know, he's a neuroscientist in Chicago, Dr. Igor Korolev, passed this along a little while ago. He said there are about 86 billion neurons in our brain, and they are all seeking connection. They're all looking for connection. There are something like 100 trillion connections in our brain, positive ones and not so good ones. And we're going to talk about both of them today on the journey towards having more positive connections in our brain. So literally what we're going to talk about is mental fitness as a way to increase your capacity to respond to life's challenges, which we have lots of, with a positive rather than a negative mindset. Positive rather than negative. Those things are very impactful in terms of our performance, how we feel peacefulness and wellness personally, as well in the relationships that we're in. Our ability to respond to challenges positively impacts all of those. In history, we've looked at trying to assess our leadership capabilities using different types of information. We started off, and have been able to do this for well over a century, being able to measure our IQ, how math smart, word smart, music smart we are. We know all a lot about that. A few decades ago, we started to talk about emotional intelligence, our EQ, and Dr. Goleman and many others that have come out with wonderful research around there. There are 17 core areas of emotional intelligence, and if you add them up and look into fine detail, there's a few thousand different aspects of emotional intelligence, and it's very important. A number of years ago, there's an area of science that I'm quite familiar with, looking at our character quotient, which is about how our attitudes and beliefs and commitments impact our behavior. And today we're going to talk about EQ, and that's, well, it's a blend of positive psychology, neuroscience, cognitive sciences, and performance sciences. The research foundation behind positive intelligence, mental fitness, comes from a number of areas. Positive psychology is the founding one in particular. It comes from research from Dr. Gallowin. There are other books you may have seen. Sean Aker is a Harvard professor who has written on this. Shirzad Chamine, whose work that we're going to talk about today, and this is his text, which you may find of interest. It's about this particular topic today on mental fitness. Positive intelligence, and this is his text. That whole area, positive psychology, was identifying that prior to its introduction, that a lot of our sense of happiness came from accomplishment. Positive psychology introduced the concept of our success comes from having a happy brain. Our brain needs to be happy, and then we're in a great spot to position ourselves for accomplishment. The emotional intelligence has been around for a couple of years in performance science. And it's complicated. There are a lot of moving parts. It's very important because all of what we do leads us to our behaviors, and emotions play a huge role in that. In fact, it's the thing that helps us understand why people choke physically on a free throw line, how athletes might choke. There's things that go on. I don't want you to choke during your meal, by the way. Please don't do that. But choke in physical activity. We'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. Then there is this conversation around neuroscience, and you probably all heard the word neuroplasticity, the ability to adapt ourselves at the brain, at the neural path level. The brain is a muscle, and it can strengthen and it can atrophy. We know that about it. And what we want to do is make sure that we're looking at building proper neural pathways in our brain. And we're going to talk about how we do that. Finally, cognitive sciences. This is a really pragmatic part of science. It's about the automatic patterns in our brains, the habits, if you will. And we really want to look at this and learn from it how to replace the improper patterns that are in our brain. PQ will bring us 10 ways to identify negative patterns in our brain. We're going to show them and label them. And I'm going to tell you some of mine in the next few minutes, okay? PQ is very accessible. There are 10 negative thinking patterns in our brain, and there's things that you can do about it. So we're going to talk about that in a little more detail. Now, the research comes, positive intelligence, mental fitness. It comes from hundreds of CEOs and their executive teams. Stanford is somewhat the hub of this, and it's on the curriculum and the faculty. Lots of students, a lot of athletes use the program. There are 500,000 people that have been to the program since its really major launch, which was early part of 2000, right during COVID. The technology came into place and it was accessible to people readily. 50 countries. Every Saturday, there are between 300 or 400 people from around the world that start the intensive program. And I've had somebody start last couple months of Saturdays, people starting this particular program. There's an organization called Young Presidents Organization. They are CEOs of private companies, very large companies. Some of them, I'm told, have somewhere up to 25% of GDP in different countries. They are active in this particular program. And the book itself is a New York bestseller book. It's really hard to get. I know when I wanted one a year ago, it took a few months because it was out of order. So but I think it is restocked that. Today, what we want to do is talk about kind of the secret sauce behind mental fitness. And the secret sauce really is looking at factor analysis, discovering root causes, and trying to radically simplify things. When we talk about emotional intelligence, when you've got 2,000 different variables to work with, it's a little hard to say, I am growing in emotional intelligence. I may feel it, I may look like it, but the evidence trail might be a little harder to track. We're going to talk about really just a few root causes. When we start to think about how we describe the world around us from a color spectrum perspective, and we think about all of these colors, they essentially all come from just a couple of colors. Three colors are the source of all of the colors around us. Red, blue, yellow. And if we're looking at digital, it's green. But those are the colors that create the landscapes, everything that we see around us. Factor analysis, when applied to mental fitness, has identified three core muscles, neural muscles that are responsible for our level of mental fitness. They include the saboteur interceptor, which is being able to identify negative thinking in our brains, intercept it. We'll talk about saboteurs in a minute. It is the sage part of our brain, which is where we're able to make healthy, positive choices that create ease and flow in our activities. We'll talk a little bit more about the sage part of the brain. And then the self-command part of our brain, which is where we are able to have some self-discipline, self-focused patients, and actually make choices that we move from one side to the other. Like habits, like building habits. These are the things that we are going to look at. Three neat categories that describe all of these. Now, this is these are the 10 negative thinking patterns that are in our brain. The saboteurs, and these are the sage powers: exploration, empathy, exploration, innovate, navigate, and activate. At Stanford, I'm told they call the saboteurs the dark side and the sage powers the light side, or Darth Vader and the Jedi warriors. You know, that's kind of different and have very different functions within our brain. We're going to talk about saboteurs right now, the first thing. And the first saboteur that we have in our brain is called the judge. It's the master saboteur. And it's when it's around, it's usually bad news. When we start to judge, we judge ourselves. We have an inner critic that beats the crap out of us sometimes, really hard on us, because that's just what we do. That's what the judge does. It has us judging other people, and when we are very difficult and hard on ourselves, that spills out into judging other people, and we may well prejudge circumstances and events as well. We've already got a preconceived notion about what's going to be, has to be in place, or I'm going to hate this meeting, or I'm going to be just like this there. Our judge is telling us all of these things. Well, three modalities of the judge, ever present. Everyone has a judge. We all have a judge. And it's nonstop, forever work listening to the judge. It's always there. But we need to know it's there. The other accomplice saboteurs, there are 9 of them. They come to us with different types of motivations and styles. The motivations range from wanting to be independent, to be accepted by someone or even ourselves, to being secure in what we're doing. Or the styles range from being assertive to earning whatever it is we're trying to do, trust or relationship or respect, or avoiding. The saboteurs, these are the names of them: controller, the hyperachiever, the restless. Any of those names resonate with anybody in the room? The ones raising their hands. Your chat's busy. Stickler, the pleaser, the hypervigilant. Those are saboteurs. That line's got a couple of lines in there. Last one, the avoider, the victim, the hyper-rational. Those are the saboteurs that we all have. We all have these saboteurs. They are equal opportunity destroyers when they start to work on our brains. However, they do come from our strengths. Our saboteurs are identified probably before we are born, and then through our childhood experience and as we're formed, they start to become strengths, but when overused, tend to be saboteurs and be detrimental to our ability to function well. There is a way, by the way, there's a concept of neuroreceptors. And when we are using our saboteurs or we see them in other people, we know them right away. Right? We see them. When somebody's using a judge, our judge sees that and wants to react in the same way. Neuroreceptors in our neurons. Now, there is a way that you can take an assessment, and we can talk about that. I can guide you to how you do that. It's a quick self-assessment as it meets all the psychometric requirements. It's a really excellent tool. It only takes about 4 or 5 minutes. And it will show you what your specific saboteurs might be. These aren't mine, but one of mine is on there. One of mine is called the stickler. And I should say that saboteurs are not types. It's not like Myers-Briggs or DISC or any of the other types of personality profiles that you may be experienced with. It's not that. These are trends, thinking patterns that occur in our brain. They don't create us. They don't own us. We don't name ourselves after them. We just say we have stickler saboteurs. I have that, and I have a high performer saboteur, and a couple of others. My stickler saboteur is an interesting one because it probably served me very well in my career. I was in the financial services industry for many years, where you can highly imagine that calculating interest has got to be right, the report's got to be right, your banking system's got to work. I was in corporate banking and CEO for an operation, and everything had to work really, really well. Probably having a stickler mentality was good, and even being able to predisposed to think a lot about risk management, which is vital too. However, it carries a bit of a toll. It does carry a toll. There's things that go along with it. Yeah, for me, the toll may have not played out in my professional life, but maybe more in my personal life. When I start to be the stickler at home, and the stickler just, well, you can see, it's very punctual, methodical, very wonderful, great things in the stickler. However, there's a right and there's a wrong. I know the right way. It's got to be done my way, and everything needs to be perfect, or else it's not any good. I don't know if anybody else identifies with that in the room, but that's the stickler. I was thinking about this last summer. My wife came to me with an idea, and it was a wonderful idea, although it scared me. My stickler kind of revved up, and I started to think about, okay, well, what's all the work involved with this? How much is it going to cost? Is it going to be any good when it's done? And as I started to get into that line of questioning, I stopped myself. I had been training for a few months and was able to intercept my saboteur. I stopped myself and provided more encouragement. And the project began. Her and her friends started to build what turned out to be a beautiful pond in our backyard, which has given us an awful lot of joy. And I think about this. They're probably in my style, and my style of relating with people, I've probably stopped a lot of projects by saying, you tell me it's going to be perfect and all the rules and get the Gantt chart done and everything done. And those that don't fly that way get totally stalled by it. In this case, this pond is a great symbol for me, and how there are many benefits for calming your saboteur and choosing another approach. Okay, the saboteurs and sage powers, they live in different parts of our brain. And the saboteurs, they physically live in the brainstem, the limbic system, and the parts of the left brain. This is where the saboteurs exist. The sage powers are middle prefrontal cortex right here. They are where the empathy circuitry is in the brain, and parts of the right brain. So they physically manifest into different parts of the brain. And as people are thinking in certain areas, MRIs will pick up where your neurons are firing. Very important, very important. We actually had some people going through the group program a while ago, and one of them, their husband is a radiologist, and they were hoping they could get some MRI time to follow this up. But the research has been done. The difference between the saboteurs and the sage are their impact on motivation and how we motivate ourselves. The saboteurs, they motivate us through negative emotions. negative emotions. The sage use positive emotions, which is more like ease and flow. The saboteurs will use the tricks of fear, stress, anger, guilt, shame, insecurity, perhaps even superiority in others or in self. Those are things that bring negative feelings. The sage motivates us through empathy, curiosity, creativity, passion, and even things like fearlessness. We're focused and we're able to do it. The saboteurs motivate us. There's a toll. The sage, when we're in the sage part of our brain, it's more ease and flow. In the flow, which you're in flow, that's what it's like. The saboteurs, they will generate some level of success. And I can affirm that. I can contest, or I can believe in that. I've seen it in my own profession. My saboteurs got me to a certain level. I work with leaders and I coach organizational leaders now in their teams, and I work with them every day and they say, you know what? I do what I need to do, but it's very challenging. I'm living with regret. I'm living with worry. That means their saboteurs are much more active in their brain. The sage powers then will generate, presumably, at least the same amount of success, but life is more ease and flow because you're not being convicted and punished by your saboteurs moment after moment throughout every day. Yeah. So this is life, saboteur or sage. You gotta make your choice, what it is. My suggestion is a great thing to do is find out what your saboteurs are. I didn't find out what my saboteurs were and how they were burned until my age. I wish I would have done this a long time ago. And I'm absolutely delighted to be working with a number of young leaders that are finding out what they are, and they have their life ahead of them to work on saboteurs and calm them so they're less of a negative impact on them. Okay. Now, so the saboteurs, I guess a question about a negative emotion is good for you. Are they or not? Interesting. I talked about throwing from the free throw line, baskets and choking. I don't know how many will know the name LeBron James. He's just kind of the biggest thing in basketball now, or recently with all the awards. But there's this other guy, Steph Curry. I don't know if you've seen the two play and their differences. LeBron James puts $1.5 million worth of money into his body and his mind every year, just to be mentally, spiritually, physically sound and ready for the game. $1.5 million. It's been a great return on investment because he's worth $1 billion or something like that. So it's a good spend. Steph Curry, I'm sure he does his stuff, but he's doing a great job. When you look at LeBron James, he misses a ton of shots in the free throw, and he looks like he's just grinding it out. He's just serious, and it looks like he's in pain actually when he's playing. Steph Curry, on the other hand, one of the last times I saw him play, he was at midcourt, and he hurled the ball up in the air as the buzzer was going, and it swooshed. And he just smiled, and he's absolutely working in sage. No saboteurs operating in those two individuals. So are negative emotions good for you? Well, that's a question that needs an answer. Is pain good for you? When we allow ourselves to be subjected to the saboteurs and just do nothing about it, it really is like putting our hand on the stove and not taking it off. Putting your hand on the stove and not taking it off. How long would you like to feel pain like that? Or are you okay with that pain? Who is? Who's okay? Okay. Who's not? Okay. There's your exercise. There's your physical exercise. Raising hands. I hope you're doing that on chat too. All right. No, we don't want that kind of pain. We really don't want that kind of pain. It is helpful though, because it is an alert signal. And we probably should be prepared to endure that pain for maybe 1 second. going to do something about it because it is important to understand. All right, so staying in negative emotion hurts our ability to see clearly, respond with empathy, curiosity, creativity, focused action, courage. So negative emotions, they are saboteurs. Let's talk about SAGE for a few minutes. The inner Jedi, as they call it in Stanford. The SAGE lives in a region of the brain associated with positive emotions. That's the prefrontal cortex, the empathy circuitry, parts of the right brain. Peace and calm is there. It's where we're clear-headed and focused. We're in the zone. We're in the flow. We are more creative there because we're not limited by the boundaries of our saboteurs. And we see big picture much more vividly. That's what we are seeing. Big picture, big picture. Right? And when we are seeing this, we are really using a SAGE perspective and things that we look at. And I'll share that through a story. Now, here's an interesting picture. This is mother and child, and this is oxytocin firing in the brain. Start to see they're in SAGE. There's empathy, there's support there, there's something going on. This is an example of what SAGE power looks like, magnified through use of MRI. Now, the SAGE perspective is that when something happens, whatever it is, the outcome or circumstance can be turned into some kind of gift. Some kind of gift. Everything. Like what comes to me is COVID. Well, there's not a lot of wonderful things that came out of it, although I talk to clients, oh, we had the best time ever. We made so much money. We did all this stuff. So people are really, really happy. A lot of people aren't. What I'm happy about is I read many books. I have a lot of other things to do. And my first one was Essentialism by Greg McKeown. And I don't know how many of you have seen that book, but it talks about getting to the core, getting to focus what's really important in your life. Not just being tidy in your physical space, but everything you do, setting goals and then walking and living with those particular goals. Essentialism, wonderful read. And I found it very easy to let go of certain things as a result of that, because they were really peripheral to what's important for me. And so I got some benefit of that. I'm going to tell you a story to give you a sense of the SAGE perspective, so that when things happen, we're able to take a different view of it as opposed to the saboteurs beating us up for getting us in the circumstance or whatever it may be. Okay, this is it's a powerful story. It's about an old farmer and his son, and I believe it's a Chinese fable. And the main line is this: the old farmer says, "Who knows what is good and who knows what is bad? Who knows what is good and who knows what is bad?" He had a stallion in his little farm with his son, and the stallion was a prize-winning stallion. And he just won an award, and the neighbors came around and said, "This is awesome! You know, this is wonderful. Your horse won this award." And the sage old farmer said, "Well, who knows what's good and what's bad?" The next day, the stallion was stolen by thieves. As neighbors came roaring over and said, "Oh my gosh, you're not going to get your crops off. You're going to be a failure. You're going to lose your property." And the sage old farmer said, "Well, who knows what is good? Who knows what is bad?" The next day, the stallion showed up again. He broke loose from the thieves and came back with a whole bunch of mares, and a whole bunch of them. And so all of a sudden, he had all these horses around. And the neighbors came over and said, "Oh, wow, this is wonderful. You're going to be a rich man." He said, "Who knows what's good? Who knows what's bad?" The next day, the son was trying to ride one of these wild mares, got fucked off and broke his leg. Of course, you know who came in. The neighbors arrived very quickly. You know, "This is horrible. You're going to get your crop off, blah, blah, blah." The old gentleman said, "Who knows what's good and who knows what is bad?" The next day, the army marched to town. The country had declared war, and they were grabbing up all of the young people, all the young men, to take them off to war. And then the legal battle, that was not a good thing, not likely to come back. So who knows what is good? Who knows what is bad? a lot to learn from the perspective of this old gentleman farmer, about what is good and what is bad. And it's important to be able to try to seek that in what's going on around us. First of all, what is good and what is bad? What can we learn from this? What are the gifts? Maybe gifts of knowledge, they may be gifts of some type of power that we build, some type of competency or skill or habit, or it might be an inspiration. It might just be inspired by what is going on behind us. Now, which perspective is true? Saboteur is bad, saboteur is gift. Well, this can lead to sort of a metaphysical kind of question, or one that is just a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe it, it is. It might even, for some, from a spiritual perspective, a sense of providence. You know, there's good and bad, and these things happen. But if you believe it, then whichever you believe will be true. Yeah? So if you believe it, it will be true to you. Now, no pain, no gain. This is a lie. This is one of the lies we tell ourselves. Frankly, we're creating too much pain. The saboteur is having too much fun with us. It's too hard to do. So these are one of the lies that we run into in mental fitness that the saboteurs tell us. The third muscle is self-command. This is where we learn how to, after having identified saboteurs, start to move to the sage perspective and the sage powers. And we do that by hundreds of different types of techniques. If we're looking at physical fitness, when we go to the gym, right? Or we run, we do these different things, or we stretch so that our physical fitness is enhanced. From a mental fitness perspective, it's a little harder. We've got these millions of neurons running, these fibers running beneath our forehead that we need to do something with. And it sounds a little more complicated when we're dealing with neuroplasticity. However, it's not. There are many techniques that people have known of for decades or longer to calm our limbic system, breathing exercises. You've probably all heard of square breathing. You just breathing in for 4, holding for 4, etc. You've all heard that, block breathing. And many other techniques, even things as simple as taking the time to rub fingers together, just like this, so that you can feel the texture of your skin. Rubbing against each other. These are things that you can actually do to slow saboteurs down and give yourself a chance to flip to the sage perspective. Many different techniques, breathing, visual techniques, auditory techniques. And ideally, when one works in this field, in this time, you build power, you build the ability of your saboteur receptors to stop saboteurs, and you build your sage power. And I'll show you an example of that. So this is relatively a simple system. And it's simple, straightforward. If you're feeling negative, stop. You're in saboteur mode. Stop it. Don't stay in the pain. Then do some PQ reps to quiet the saboteurs and activate the sage part of your brain. Assume the sage perspective, that there's something to be learned, either knowledge, a power, or some inspiration from what's going on around us. And then use the sage powers that are available to us: empathy, curiosity, creativity, courage, focus, a sense of internal compass. All of those things are available to us to focus and move forward in a clear, calm-headed way. So the question is it really possible to shift from one side of the brain to the other, even during tough challenges? Well, the answer is yes, but the speed and the depth of the shift are dependent upon the muscle strength that you have developed, mental muscle strength that you have developed. It is wonderful to have insight. Absolutely wonderful to have insight, but insight doesn't necessarily need to change. Insight's about 20%. 80% is the work part, the mental muscle part, to do this. This particular chart shows an average day for a person, a human. You can see there's a blue line, which is the sage muscle, and the gold line, which is the saboteur, the negative versus positive. At any given time, we're at a salient level of sage. And you can see that right around 8 o'clock in the morning, the saboteurs start to reach up. That's where the judge is saying, why weren't you at work earlier? Why weren't you ready at this? Why didn't you get all this stuff done? This is going to be a really crappy day. And on and on and on and on. Okay, all of those thoughts are going through your head. Then somehow you get to an equilibrium and you start to do work. The saboteurs calm themselves. Then just before the noon hour, you look at your watch and you realize, oh no, I don't have the stuff done for this afternoon. Why don't I do this? Why am I so lazy? Why? And then you start to beat yourself up, or it's not perfect, which is what I would say. It's got to be perfect. No time for another draft. And up go the saboteurs. We have some nutrition over the noon hour and calm down, we breathe. And then get into our afternoon. At the end of the day, again, our saboteurs, they just crescendo again and say, oh my gosh, you only got 80% done of what you're supposed to do today. And then all of a sudden you judge that 80% as trash, but really it's good stuff. And so our saboteurs start to work away at us. And then that's our day, typical day. If we start to work on identifying our saboteurs, develop our ability to intercept them and move to the sage side, we build a level of sage so that the peaks and valleys are significantly less, so that we are going to be rocked not much by the saboteur presence. They're still there, but we're not going to see them as much throughout the day. And if we choose to do saboteur building more in the morning and build it up like a battery charge, like we do with our muscles, we exercise them, we get them revved up, we get them with full nutrition, and away we go. Okay, then we can miss much of what saboteur impacts are going to be throughout the day. To do this, you have to put some effort into it, and it's suggested that the work be probably about 15 minutes a day for 6 to 8 weeks, which is about what is required to build a new habit, to build a couple new habits and working on your saboteurs. It's a great idea to do it rather intensely, because if you want to fix something, you have to be intensive about it. And here, you can't defeat a gang of 10 bandits by sending one new fighter per day for 100 days. You do a lot of work, you would say, or else you're going to be fighting over skirmishing over a long period of time. So you want to do it rather intently. And this is how we build new neural pathways. And the system that we use is something that is app guided that can be used to do this. And the program that we use that I've been enrolling somebody on every Saturday for the last few months, I've been working with for about a year, involves 6-week program, watching a video 1 hour a week on a specific topic related to saboteurs or sage mind, and then practicing in a gym that's actually on an app. The gym is app-based, and it walks through, you get the chance to walk through all the key reps through the app. There's also an accountability program where teams go through and they start to learn a lot about each other and their saboteurs and how they impact the environment. Saboteurs create a contagion when somebody comes in with their controller and everybody's waiting to be controlled and wanting to fight or choose an avoidance saboteur if that was theirs. It's important to understand that. So it's great to have teams come together. I had a team of 10 partners for a firm a couple of weeks ago, spent 3 hours started talking about their saboteurs and how it impacted their relationships amongst each other and how they wanted to change things in the future so that they would actually be able to work more in ease and flow. There's also a text. This particular one is available in audiobook as well. And there's a coach. Well, you have somebody for a year on the app. When I work with my clients as individuals, then I will be their guide. We'll meet every week and we'll go through the program for 6 weeks. That's what we do. Mental fitness, like physical fitness, it is a lifelong journey. It's there for us. We can't ignore it. We ignore our mental fitness at our peril. really, the bottom line of this is working on our SAGE mastery, we get to know who we are and our best self. And that's where there's a probability of coming forward. There is a blueprint. And what I mentioned to you earlier today, there's an assessment you can take. Reach out to me. I'll share my email address. I can tell you where to get it. It's complimentary. So that's available to you. Less some cards here later, but also there is access to these 6-week programs. We put together groups routinely that put to match people together to go through this, and there's coaching systems that are available. So that's the blueprint. That is mental fitness. I wanted to share this with you. I found it to be very, very life changing for a lot of people and well, many people around the globe. So I'm going to stop right now and see what questions you have. I think we've got a few minutes before we finish up.
Thank
Thank you all for listening, being interested in this. It's important. It's a valuable part of ourselves. I encourage you all to pay attention to the mental fitness. If you can help, that's wonderful. Love to do that. Thank you. And thanks to all those online as well.